Your childhood directly affects the way you show up in your relationships today. Are you needy in your relationships, constantly worried that others are going to leave you? Are you afraid of getting too close and usually run at the first sign that things are getting serious? Or maybe you're just terrified of getting into a relationship because you've been deeply hurt in the past. The experiences you had as a child become imprinted in your mind and can completely control your life. But it doesn't have to be this way. I worked with one of the fathers of attachment theory in grad school, and I've spent hundreds of hours researching this topic. In this video, I'm going to deep dive into attachment theory and show you how your childhood is still affecting your relationships and self-worth today. I'm going to show you the exact steps you can take to heal your attachment wounds and take back control of your life. If you're struggling in your relationships, have zero confidence, and are hungry for a loving relationship, this video is for you. So why does your childhood have such a huge impact on your adult life? One of the biggest reasons is attachment. I'm sure you've heard this word thrown around a lot, but today I want to show you exactly what it means. It might seem weird, but the relationship we had with our parents in childhood completely shapes the way we relate to others and how we see ourselves. And the kind of parenting we got is what determines our attachment style. So what does attachment actually mean? Because us humans are born vulnerable and half-baked, so to speak, we need the devoted care of our mother to survive. This is why we evolved with an inherent attachment system that keeps us connected to our parents or caregivers. And when I say inherent, I mean it's literally wired into us. When we're in pain or stressed, going to someone we love calms our nervous system and our body releases things like oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin, and even endogenous opioids, which are basically morphine that our body produces itself. In many ways, love is the antidote to pain. So from the moment we're born, we seek out this closeness with our attachment figures in order to survive and soothe our distress. During these early years and throughout childhood, our brain is highly malleable. These time periods are what we call critical windows, where our brain is plastic and is constantly being wired in response to our environment. And that's why our first attachment relationships, whether they were good or bad, become imprinted in us on the deepest levels. A quick note, the man who discovered attachment theory was a British psychiatrist, Bowlby. In World War II, during the London bombings, many parents sent their children on trains to the countryside. It kept them safe, but being separated from their parents naturally had negative psychological consequences. Out of this, he developed attachment theory, where he showed that our relationship with our parents has a real impact on our mental health and well-being later on. This first attachment relationship is where we learn whether we are lovable, worthy of love, and develop self-worth. This is where we learn where others are dependable, responsive, and are a safe source of distress soothing, closeness, and intimacy. This is what we call internal working models, and we can store positive ones or negative ones. One paper describing Bowlby's work sums it up perfectly. A securely attached child will store an internal working model of a responsible, loving, reliable caregiver, and of a self that is worthy of love and attention, and will bring these assumptions to bear on all other relationships. Conversely, an insecurely attached child may view the world as a dangerous place in which other people are to be treated with great caution and see himself as ineffective and unworthy of love. We carry these internal working models into adulthood, but they can be changed if we are aware of them and consciously work on them. The reason our parents are so essential in our childhood is because they basically perform two attachment functions called a safe haven and a secure base. A safe haven is when an infant in distress can come to their parent and be soothed. A secure base is what enables a child to explore the world in a confident manner because they know they have a secure base to return to. Having a healthy safe haven as a child is how we learn to self-soothe and emotionally regulate later on. And having a secure base is how we develop a sense of self-agency, self-worth, and independence. If we didn't get these growing up, we probably have a hard time emotionally regulating in a healthy way, and we probably lack the confidence to move forward and progress in our lives. Now, a crucial thing to know is that as adults, our new attachment figures are our romantic partners, and the relationship we had with our parents will show up a lot in a relationship. I'll be making another video soon on how to understand your attachment style and how it interacts with your partners, and what you two can do to create a secure, healthy relationship. Now, you've probably heard of the 4 attachment styles: secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. Each one of these attachment styles is a result of the kind of parenting we got, and depending on that, we developed what are called attachment strategies in childhood. These attachment strategies are essentially that default programming you've probably heard all about. People with secure attachment are those lucky ones who had parents who were warm, responsive, and consistently met their needs. Later on, this is what gives them an inherent sense that they're worthy of love. They develop healthy attachment strategies, which means they know how to ask for love, encouragement, or help when they need it. People with anxious attachment had parents who were inconsistent. They were anxious and terrified because they never knew when they would get their parents' love, so they developed hyperactivating strategies. They would amplify their signs of distress, like crying and throwing tantrums, all to gain their parents' love and attention. Later in life, these kinds of people are terrified that their partner doesn't really love them and will leave them. People with avoidant attachment had parents who were absent or neglectful. They developed deactivating strategies, which means they learn to turn off their need for attachment. Later in life, they become compulsively independent and hate it when people get too close. People with disorganized attachment had parents who were abusive. They cycle between hyperactivating and deactivating strategies. They're starving for love, but also terrified of being hurt. And sometimes these are the people who repeat the pain of their childhood by unconsciously seeking out abusive relationships. Because of the abuse they experienced, they often develop other mental health issues or complex PTSD. The way the 4 specific attachment styles were discovered was through the strange situation experiment, which was developed by Mary Ainsworth, a research assistant of Bowlby. In this experiment, a child was in a room with his mother and a stranger with toys to play with. Then the mother was asked to leave the room. Naturally, the child would completely lose it and start crying. At this point, the stranger would try to play with the child, but the child wasn't having any of it. Then the mother would return. Now, here was the key moment. The way the child would respond to his mother when they were reunited is what revealed his attachment style. The children with a secure attachment style were easily soothed by their mothers. The children with an anxious attachment style couldn't be soothed. The mother would hold them, but they kept crying and were angry at their mothers. John Bowlby explained this behavior like this: when a relationship to a special loved person is endangered, we are not only anxious, but are usually angry as well. As responses to the risk of loss, anxiety and anger go hand in hand. The children with avoidant attachment didn't even seek out their mothers when she came back into the room. They seemed uninterested in their mothers and were almost avoiding them. They usually just kept playing with the toys, but not in a happy way, more as a way to distract themselves. The children with disorganized attachment usually responded in all sorts of strange ways when their mothers returned. Sometimes they would approach the mother while avoiding eye contact. They would often freeze and show signs of fear and confusion. Sometimes they would seem dazed and dissociated, or rock back and forth in place. If you take anything away from this video, it's this: your attachment style is not a life sentence. You can take control of your life and overcome your childhood. It may be hard and it may seem impossible, but you can slowly rewire your default programming. The thing is, our programming is unconscious. One of the first steps to creating change is by making the unconscious conscious. This idea originated in Freud and was then further developed by Jung. One of Jung's famous quotes is, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So the only way you can start reprogramming the default way you think, perceive situations, and respond is by becoming aware of your patterns. You might be thinking, if my default programming is wired into me, how can I possibly change? The answer is brain plasticity. The reason our programming becomes imprinted in our minds in the first place is because our brain is so plastic and malleable in early life. But today, there's a ton of research showing that the brain is much more plastic in later life than we once thought. David Eaglemen, who's a neuroscientist at UC Berkeley, wrote a great book on this called Wired. He says that your brain is a relentless shapeshifter. It carries on remolding itself throughout your life. Every man can, if he so desires, become the sculptor of his own brain. If you allow me to nerd out for a second, there's this idea in neuroscience called Hebb's law, which says that neurons that fire together wire together. Essentially, what this means is that the more we practice new patterns, the more those neurons will fire, and the stronger those neural circuits will become. Those new patterns over time will literally become cemented in our brains, and they'll eventually feel like second nature. James Cleary writes about how to do this in Atomic Habits. The most practical way to change who you are is to change what you do. Habits matter because they help you become who you wish to be. Now, in terms of healing insecure attachment, it's all about rewriting those internal working models. Anxiously attached people often have low self-worth, don't feel that they're lovable, and think that their partner will be the solution to all their problems. A lot of times they think that their attachment wounds will heal only if their partner is constantly there for them. But even the most loving partner can't be responsive 100% of the time. And even if their partner constantly told them that they love them, people with anxious attachment can't even receive that love. On a deeper level, they don't believe it. What anxious people really need to work on is learning how to self-soothe and emotionally regulate. They need to work on building their own self-worth instead of defining their self-worth based on their partner. Avoidantly attached people have the opposite problem. They feel like they can only rely on themselves and are terrified of intimacy. What they need to work on is learning how to open up to their partner and consciously fight their instinct to run away when they start getting close. This can look like sharing their problems, asking for help, and learning that they don't have to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders, and taking small steps towards building intimacy and not being afraid of showing affection. For people with disorganized attachment, the work needs to start by cutting out toxic people from their lives and breaking the pattern of getting themselves into these toxic, abusive relationships. It's also crucial for them to work on treating their underlying mental health issues and healing from their past traumas. Now, because attachment is inherently relational, this work needs to happen both within yourself and in your relationship. There was a study that showed that we can have different attachment styles with different people. So no matter what kind of parents we had, we can slowly develop a more secure attachment style by building a healthy relationship.